You mentioned the Cairns Taipans. Now, they did have a big win over Brisbane, and keeping in mind that we're recording this podcast at around 12:30 on Tuesday afternoon. So I don't want to get into the details of what could happen because I suspect by the time a lot of people are listening to this, there will be some news and there will be further additions to be made. So maybe for the sake of time, it doesn't make sense to do it now. What I will ask, though, is a couple of days after the incident, and you've been speaking to parties from both sides and getting both sides of the argument, how do you look at the actual incident itself?
On the court or off the court?
Well, I guess there's two parts, isn't it? But away from the investigation, how did you just see how it all played out?
So it's interesting. So for those who don't know, Aron Baynes in a really physical rebound contest, right? Gets elbowed in the throat by that man, right? He's incensed because of that. And so he directs that ire toward the officials. He did that in a really aggressive way. He cannot act that aggressively toward a ref, right? He had to be held back by his own teammates. It looked quite scary, to be honest. He obviously cannot act that way. And then as the teams both went to the locker room, weirdly down the same tunnel, Aron Baynes seemingly waited for Lat Mayen, and they were sort of shoulder to shoulder as they walked into the locker room, exchanged some words. They went back and forth. And from what I understand, they just separated. And then came the alleged physical confrontation where the Bullets alleged that Adam Forde confronted Aron Baynes. It led to a physical altercation that I'm told ultimately led to Forde being thrown into a wall or into a door or something like that. Basically, you can't, if you're a coach, you can't put your hands on a player. If that is what happened, you shouldn't confront a player off the court. That obviously cannot happen. Obviously, whoever instigated any physical contact or violence or anything should obviously be reprimanded for that accordingly. I imagine this will eventually blow over. Stu Lash, the senior basketball advisor for the Bullets, obviously put his hat in the ring and has been very, very much on the front foot of saying, this is on Adam Forde. This is a continuation of a brand of behavior that we've seen, and that he should be suspended multiple NBL games, right? He said that. He told ESPN that. The NBL is in the middle of its tribunal process. They're getting statements from players and from Forde and everyone. There will be an outcome here, and I don't think it's going to be controversial. It's going to be, this was something that cannot happen, and the outcome of these disciplinary measures will mean that it won't happen again. That's my feel on it. It was the thing that annoyed me, or that was weird to me, was if you're Adam Forde, why would you even engage in a potential sort of confrontation with a player? Go to your locker room. Everyone just go to your locker rooms. We don't need this, right? Ben Simmons said this a few years ago. No one's really going to fight on the court, right? And generally that is what happens. No one really fights. Everyone sort of mans up, chest out. No one fights. Just go to your locker rooms. Go play the game. Go win. And to Cairns' credit, they won the game.
The two points I would make about the incident, the first one is just with Aron Baynes and the physicality that he plays through. And he plays with physicality, make no mistake. But he plays through physicality as well. And if you watch close enough and if you're in the building and you get a chance to see it, I'm not saying that is something that everyone wants to see, and particularly the frustration with the officials, all those types of things. But it's been coming for a while, I would say. And whether it's an elbow to the throat or it's an elbow somewhere else or it's being shoved or it's being grabbed or it's being pulled, it happens every night because of how big this man is and the required effort it takes to try and shift him out of box out scenarios. So I had felt on several occasions over the last year that he's been in the NBL that there might have been a situation where this could potentially boil over, the frustration, particularly when he's getting no calls. And a lot of times, if you watch basketball long enough, you'll know that little guys get away with stuff on big men. Yep. So I wasn't totally surprised that the frustration boiled over from Aron Baynes. That's the first point I'd make. And then just with Adam Forde, I agree with all the points you made. You wouldn't like to see a coach, not Adam Forde specifically, because I don't know what happened, but any coach get involved in that type of matter. But we also do know specific to Adam Forde that he will stick up for his players. And I don't know in this particular instance, but I don't think that any of the Cairns Taipans players would be too upset that, again, Adam Forde continually will put himself in perhaps the situations where he will publicly or behind the scenes defend his guys.
So that there is like a public narrative that exists that is along those lines, right? How good Adam Forde sticks up for his players, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. If it was Chase Buford,
yeah, that's right,
and it was Bryce Cotton, would he be given the same grace? I think the answer is like obviously no. People would say, "How dare you? You cannot do that," right? And that's where I am in this. There's like a political game that you play where it's, oh, imagine if your political opponent did this, would you actually stand for this? I don't think people would. So if you look at this situation in a vacuum, I think there have to be some things that are sort of like non-negotiables and like not tolerable. And I think if a coach went out of his way to go and confront a player in a tunnel, an opposing player in a tunnel, I think that's just an obvious like no-go zone.
Of course. I totally agree.
Even if he is like quote unquote sticking up for his players, because if you feel like you would get aggrieved if Chase Buford did it, then you should be aggrieved if this happened.
I agree, but we also know that is because of the Sydney Kings, and this is the Cairns Taipans, and there's different teams and there's different levels of perhaps hate or distaste for certain clubs around the league from fan bases, generally bigger teams.
Yeah.
So I think that's why that would clearly be the case. I was just making the point that I'm not sure whether the players...
Oh, no, of course. They would have... presumably, they would have appreciated...
That's right.
Yeah, thank you, coach, for standing up for me. In my mind, it's if that is what happened, what are you standing up for? Aron Baynes didn't really do that much to Taipans players.
Totally.
If anything, the officials have the biggest gripe here. And then to your point, I wonder if there will be sort of conversations among the officials with regard to how Aron Baynes is officiated. And maybe keeping a closer eye on, hey, like there is excessive contact here that we're not really noticing because he's obviously a large gentleman. I wonder if things might change because of this.
Yeah, small-term pain, potential long-term gain for the Brisbane Bullets. We'll